We're at Wandavision, episode 5. I am recording this early. I did not record a review of Owl House like I'm supposed to do every week. That's because I'm going on a trip for today and I had to get some things out of the way and do those quick. So we're going to review this. I may review the new HBO Max anime film that's dropping on Saturday instead of Friday because I'm not going to be home Friday. And so there's a bunch of stuff going on. But I did want to talk about WandaVision day one because everyone else is going to be talking about it day one. So it's a big deal. So in this episode, there's a lot that happens. Again, spoilers for WandaVision, episodes 1 through 5. But yeah, this series is really strange. At this point, because this whole episode built it up to the fact that Wanda was gonna be the main villain of this series, and then it kind of changed towards the end, but we'll get into that. So, how do I even explain how this episode starts? This episode just starts, and it's the sitcom again. But this time we have more blending of the two, um, outside of Westview, inside of Westview. And, Kat Dennings and the side characters, I think they're still really annoying. I don't like them. I think Monica Rambeau's fine, but just the guy from Ant-Man the Wasp, which I didn't know he was from that movie, but yeah, he's here. I don't like him. He's not funny, and neither is Kat Dennings. They're just annoying, and I just don't like them in the show. I don't like their presence. I hate those characters, and yeah, but this episode was pretty great for a lot of stuff, but it also just this episode hurts a little bit because last episode you feel like you have confirmation of what's going on. Oh, it's Wanda. She's controlling all this. And this episode builds it up like that, and then just everything kind of comes to a head, and there's some things that just don't make sense. So, one thing that's very strange in this episode, Agnes comes to help with the kids, and she just kind of just shows up where she needs to be, and it seems like she has an idea of what's going on. Wanda's using her powers in front of her. Vision's even questioning, like, what's going on? And Vision seems a lot more alert in this episode. And we see that Wanda did break into the sword facility and steal Vision's dead body and kind of create this whole reality. So they try to go in there and spy with this 80s technology, and see what's going on in this little town. Wanda takes the thing and expected it just to fly out. No, she walks out and is like, "Is this yours?" And she's like, "This is your last warning. I got what I needed, got what I wanted. Leave me alone. Leave my town alone." And it's so strange because it's like she doesn't say, "Oh, I wanted Vision," or I got, I got all I needed. I wanted him. She doesn't say any of that. So maybe there's something else she wanted. Anyways, she goes and she aims the guns at the guy's head, ready to kill him. Monica Rambeau's still peaceful about it. These sword agents, they're not. They're ready to commit violence. But she says, "Leave me alone," and then she walks back into her reality. And that's us. We hear of them in this episode. But then we see Vision, who was at work this entire episode, and he sees like this transmission through the computers that says sword, blah, 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 Maxima Project, and what's going on outside in the world. And he's like, "Ooh, that's interesting." He doesn't know exactly what's going on, but now he has an idea. Wanda is controlling something, but he touches this guy, and he says, "My thoughts, they're not my own. You stop her. She's hurting me." And then he just touches him again. He goes back to normal, which tells you possibly Wanda's controlling him. that's what this whole episode builds it up. And the other weird thing is the kids, they keep changing, they keep growing up, and it seems like it's out of Wanda's control. So is she really controlling this universe, right? Because if she was, then why is this happening out of her control? Why does she seem like she doesn't want this to happen, right? Because if this world is the perfect world, then why is this happening? Why is any of this happening at all? That's the big question I have after this episode. And then the next part, the ending. So Wanda and Vision get in a big fight. They're flying, they're using their powers, they're getting aggressive. And he's like, "What's outside of Westville? What are you doing? Let go of him." He has such distrust for Wanda. And the door bell rings. And it's usually something Wanda created. At least that's been the assumption this whole time. And Vision doesn't trust her, but she opens it, and it's Quicksilver, Pedro, but not the Quicksilver from the movies, the Marvel MCU movies. He looks like the one from the Fox movies, which, wow. First of all, that's really cool that they brought back that aspect, but I don't know how that makes sense. And then the other part of this is, if they're rebooting the Fox, if they're bringing them in this way, I will be really pissed. Okay? Because here's my thought. The X-Men movies died. The older ones. And the reason I believe they died is because in the first X-Men movie, when they were making that movie, none of the actors were allowed to read the comics. Because Bryan Singer, the director of majority of those X-Men movies, the older ones, with Hugh Jackman and all that, did not want them to make any movie, anything related to the comic. They weren't allowed to wear their wear their actual uniforms like from the comics. It wasn't allowed to be colorful. It was the gray spandex, and that was okay when it came out in 2000, right? Because there wasn't a bunch of comic book movies like we have now. People weren't used to this type of thing. And so the movies came out and people were okay with that, you know. People were fine with that. I mean, some hardcore comic book fans were like, but majority of comic fans were like okay with it, because it was just kind of a novelty to even get see your characters get adapted. I mean, there was no Spider-Man movies at this point. I mean, this is how early it was in the comic book movie game. There was not a single Spider-Man movie made, except for like some 70s TV show. There was like a Japanese Spider-Man, but you know, there wasn't like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, any of that stuff. And so if they are using this as a vessel to bring in the Fox X-Men universe, it's not going to work. And not just, it won't work. I will also hate this, because the Fox X-Men movies didn't work. And I like many of them. I like Days of Future Past. I like First Class. I like X-Men 2. I like parts of X-Men, the first one. But that's it. Like, that's, there's like, I believe 19 X-Men movies. 19, something like that. 18, something like that. That's a lot of X-Men movies. And majority of them are bad, except for like Deadpool 1 and 2, Logan, whatever. And, you know, again, the reason I think they died is because when Marvel came in 2008, we had like Iron Man, and these movies started getting more unique, and they started acting like the comic more, and they started being more creative. I mean, they're not completely 100% accurate to the comic, but they're never going to be. But, you know, they have a lot of elements from the comics. They, you know, I mean, look at Thor Ragnarok. That movie, so colorful. It looks like a comic book. It takes elements from Planet Hulk and all and elements from other comedic Thor stories, and it's a crazy, crazy movie. You can, if you bring in the X-Men, you're from the Fox movies, you're bringing in the most bland, bad versions of those characters you could possibly make. I mean, those movies were great for what they did and for the time that they were created, but doing it now just wouldn't make sense. It'd be very, very bad, and it wouldn't fit with the rest of the MCU at all. I know they have to kind of keep continuity with Deadpool, but I'm not really sure how they're gonna do that. I thought here's the thing: Deadpool, you can kind of do whatever you want. He breaks the fourth wall. He will break it down and be like, haha, isn't this universe so confusing? So people will buy into it and be fine with it. But these actual X-Men characters and movies, just no. And Hugh Jackman's retired, so how are you gonna bring Wolverine into this? It's just this whole. So I'm hoping this is just a weird multiverse thing that they're kind of like, this kind of exists in its own little universe, but this isn't this universe's version of the X-Men, because we should not bring in the X-Men like this. This should just be like a weird thing for this reality or Wandavision, and it shouldn't be how we bring in the X-Men. And it possibly isn't. I don't know, but I can't think of any other reason why you would have made Quicksilver look like the one from Days of Future Past. Besides that, I guess they're trying to appease some fans, but I don't think they're trying to appease any fans. This show is, I don't know. I don't know how to feel. I'm not excited about next episode now. This one does not make me excited because, number one, the last episode gave me all this confirmation of this is what's most likely going on. Here's your little hints. And then this episode undoes that. And then it also makes me cautious about the X-Men now. Because I was always hyped for the X-Men coming in the MCU. I was like, because here's the thing. I'm not a Marvel person. I don't love Marvel at all. I don't like most the characters in the stories. I'll watch them, and I mostly watch them because everybody else does, right? Everybody else watches Marvel movies. And so, in my mind, I'm not a big Marvel fan. But I love X-Men and Fantastic Four. Those are my two go-to characters. I'm mostly a DC guy. I'll pretty much read anything DC, or watch anything DC, usually for the most part anyways. Of course I hate stuff like Batman vs. Superman, but, I'm a big DC person at the end of the day. And so, for me, the X-Men being rebooted and being more accurate to the source material that I'm very familiar with because I'm a big X-Men guy. I love the X-Men animated series. I love the comics. I love so much about it. I love the weird, obscure characters and things like that. I'm so into the X-Men that when I watch this episode and see that, it makes me really scared. I wanted a better version of the X-Men, and I'm not going to say I'm not going to get it, but I'm afraid I'm not going to get it. And I was already worried about Fantastic Four, knowing that it's from the same guy who directed Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home, John Watts, and I really hate those movies, and they're just really boring. And now I might get a really boring Fantastic Four movie instead of a really good one. I don't know, but we will see. It's all up in the air. It's all up in the air. I don't know what's going on with any of this, but I'll still watch the show to the end. But I can say I'm not excited to see the next episode, and I think most people will disagree with me on that point. They won't feel the same way, but I I'm not there. I'm not there.